Today is Sunday, November 13th, 2022. Welcome to the very first episode of Nothing But Giants, Knicks and Yanks. I am your host, Jeff Crewman. We have an exciting first episode here for you today. The Giants, coming off their bye week, beat the Houston Texans 24-16 to go 7-2 so far on this season. That is right, the New York Football Giants are 7-2. The Knicks, unfortunately, lose today 145-135 against the Oklahoma City Thunder. That brings them to a weekly record of 1-3 and their overall record to a disappointing 6-7 start. The Yankees, not a lot of updates, but their offseason has officially kicked off with the beginning of free agency. Thanks again for everyone joining us. This is our first episode of Nothing But Giants, Knicks and Yanks. My name is Jeff Crewman, and I'm going to be your host. I'm a lifelong Giants, Knicks, and Yankees fan. For a long time, I have been a big-time content consumer of all of the great YouTube and podcasts, shows that are coming out about the Giants, Knicks, and Yankees, and I felt like it was time for me to get off the bench and get in the game and start creating some of my own content around my favorite teams. So what are you going to get when you can join us here at Nothing But Giants, Knicks, and Yanks? We're going to start off as a weekly show that we'll record on Sundays after the Giants game. We'll release on Mondays. And that's going to give you your update all season long on all things Giants, Knicks, and Yankees. So we're going to lead off with the Giants today. The Giants are 7-2, a little bit closer than we would have liked, but beat the Houston Texans 24-16. 7-2. I can't believe this is the first episode of this show, and we get to talk about a 7-2 New York Football Giants team. Today was the first game where the Giants did not trail in a game. That is correct. They have been the comeback kids, but not so much today. I mean, they just dominated from the very start. Lots of injuries, obviously, on the offensive line and some defensive replacements coming in, especially with Dane Belton replacing Xavier McKinney. And we also saw McFadden jump in there for Tay Crowder today at middle linebacker. This is really an exciting game. I mean, Dexter Lawrence is playing himself into Pro Bowl consideration right now. Only getting one sack, not filling up the stat sheet exactly, but huge plays coming out of interior defensive line. One of my favorite plays of the day was setting up that Dane Belton touchdown. If you go back and look at that play, that does not happen without Dexter Lawrence getting in Davis Mills' face right away. He was not comfortable, and you could see it, and that ball went right to Dane Belton. Just some beautiful, beautiful defense. Speaking of Belton, I was really impressed overall with his play. I mean, he had a few missed tackles that were pretty ugly early on and let the Texans kind of get in the groove offensively. But that was a huge interception. And McKinney being our defensive play caller and just such, that glue guy on the defense that does all the things that doesn't really fill up the stat sheet. It was really great to see Belton, show up and really make a couple of those, exceptionally good defensive plays. Overall, I was a little bit disappointed with the offensive look overall. The Texans are a really poor run defensive team. I expected them to go to Saquon Barkley a lot, and they did go to him early and often, where he set a career record in rushing attempts. But overall, I was a little uninspired by the play calls. I mean, first and second down for the first half were just automatic runs. I don't understand the 2nd and 10 runs every single time. It seems like at a certain point, the other team sees it coming, and you'd be better off, I don't know, give me a sweep, give me some play action. Daniel Jones has been throwing the ball very effectively, and I really want to see them trust in him a little bit more and get some of these plays going when they're in obvious running downs. You got to give the Houston defense a little bit of credit. They started selling out for the run, and they did make some big stops on drives that kept them in the game far longer than they really should have been. I was expecting the Giants to win by at least 2 scores. 8 points is just on the fringe. And there were a couple times where it felt tighter than it was for a game that we won wire to wire. Saquon had a huge game against Houston, adding to his great season so far. Not sure if this is going to put him back in the rushing leaders total. Haven't seen Nick Chubb's numbers yet, but he is in that conversation, playing himself into a potentially big payday at the end of the year, and generally just really putting the team on his back several times where it looked like the play was going to be stopped, right there at the line. He has that vision to see the pulling guard, get himself out on the edge and make plays happen, getting 2 or 3 yards when it feels like it's going to be a 1-yard loss, getting 5 or 6 when it feels like it would be a 1 or 2 yard gain. These are the kind of things that we expect from Saquon, and have really started to take for granted a little bit this season with how good he's been looking. Some details on Saquon: 35 carries for 152 yards, averaging 4.3 per touch with a touchdown. I mean, that's just about as good as it gets. And the passing game, Daniel Jones, another effective and efficient performance. 13 of 17, 197 and 2 touchdowns. It just felt like another game where he was in complete control, had very good command of the offense, and made every play that was asked of him, which unfortunately was not that many times. I'm really looking forward to the game when Mike Kafka and this offense really open it up and let Daniel Jones throw the ball downfield. And I think there was a less than talked about play that happened towards the end of the game on that final drive where the Giants had the ball. It was third down. Daniel Jones is rolling out, getting chased. Instead of throwing it away, he realizes, let me just tuck this down and take the sack. It almost caught me by surprise because at first I was frustrated he was taking the sack, and then realized that's a really smart play. Keep the clock running. Don't throw it away. Don't let save Houston a timeout. There was a lot of positive coming out of this game, but we do have to talk about the negative, which was a big negative, and that was Kenny Golladay. I don't know what was going on Giants Twitter before this game, but everyone was thinking today was going to be the Kenny Golladay breakout. Well, he certainly broke out, but broke himself right onto the bench. His first pass to him was a little bit of an outside throw by DJ. But it also kind of felt like one that, with all of the hype and knowing that you need to make an impact, you'd like to see him at least dive for, jump for, make a little bit of a better effort than just flailing the arms. That one seemed forgivable. The second one was one that my grandmother, may she rest in peace, could have caught. I mean, it was right in the breadbasket, and he just did not come down with it. And that was the last we saw of him. After he was on the field for most of the snaps of the first half, Kenny Golladay found himself riding the bench the rest of the time. And I got to be honest, I don't think we're going to see Kenny Golladay, barring an injury, for the rest of the year. He is in no way, shape, or form deserving of playing time. I'd much rather see Isaiah Hodgins and Wan'Dale Robinson continue to get more touches and be prioritized in this offense. All right, let's go ahead and jump on over to the Knicks. This one's going to be a little bit tougher to get through. This was quite the roller coaster game to add to the roller coaster of a week and roller coaster of a season so far for us Knicks fans. Super inconsistent play to this on this 145-135 loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder. For those of you who did not catch the game, unfortunately, I must remind you right now that the Knicks scored almost a franchise record of 48 points in the first quarter and looked like they could not miss in that first quarter. But unfortunately, in that same quarter, they gave up 36 points, and then they continued to give up 43 in the following two quarters on this way to a 145-point blowout. The Knicks allowing 145 points in regulation at home against the Oklahoma City Thunder is the highest opponent point total allowed by a Tom Thibodeau-coached Knicks team. Oklahoma City hit 55% of its three-point attempts, and they entered this game ranked 29th in three-point percentage. This seems to be a theme so far. The three ball is just a problem for the Knicks defense. It's not even like the Thunder got up a lot of threes, but they are like practice shoot-around threes with no contest, seemingly no rotation, and the Knicks looking completely lost on defense. With Tom Thibodeau being this great defensive-minded coach, these kind of games cannot happen. This looked like an all-star game. I know there was a 12 o'clock start. I know that's a little bit of a weird time. It's against the Oklahoma City Thunder. You're about to go on the road for 5 games. But come on. I mean, showing no life on the defensive end of the court and really just embarrassing yourself. I mean, the boos you could hear on TV were just disappointing. Another stat that really stood out to me was that the Knicks starters were outscored by 28 points by the Thunder starters. I don't want to go by this line by line, but if you look at the starters for the Oklahoma City Thunder and the starters for the New York Knicks, this should not be an even comparison. The Thunder have no height, no shot blocking, and it felt like we let them get to the hoop all day. We couldn't knock down a shot, and we just let them get set all day. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander looked like an all-star. Maybe he is going to be an all-star, but he had that Euro step going, and he was just cooking us all day. If you spend any time on Knicks Twitter, after the game, there was obviously some significant backlash towards our coach, Tom Thibodeau. I've been a big proponent of Coach Thibs, especially after that breakout season. Generally has the Knicks defense looking so good, but I am just confused by some of the calls that he's making with this team right now. Down the stretch of this game, Evan Fournier played basically the whole fourth quarter, while RJ Barrett and Brunson and Grimes just continued to sit. After the game, I heard Thibodeau say something to the effect of, felt like that second unit was giving us a spark. I don't know what kind of spark it was he was thought that he was getting out of Evan Fournier tonight, but with 0 points and his just putrid defense, I don't know how you keep running him out there. I know he's getting paid, but like Kenny Golladay with the Giants, we can't force this ineptitude out onto the floor when it is just all bad. Like there's nothing redeeming other than that one lob to Obi Toppin that looked really nice from Fournier earlier in the game. And I'm not really understanding the Grimes situation. He's healthy. They were referring to him as situational, but today, not on the injury report, gets in some minutes, looks good, and then comes right back out. We're trying all these different guys on Gilgeous-Alexander, but he doesn't put Grimes, who was this untouchable piece during the trade offseason when we're going after guys like Donovan Mitchell. And now we're in the season, and he's hardly getting time. I personally really like Grimes. I'm willing to withhold some judgment until we see him out on the court for a solid 20-ish games in a row, battling this foot injury earlier in the season. But I'm just not understanding the moves by Thibodeau. Earlier in his career, myself and other Knicks fans criticized Thibodeau for, keeping too tight a rotation and not getting some of these young guys out on the court. Now, even still early in the season, we're running 11 different bodies out there onto the court who are all getting significant minutes. And, I'm just not really seeing how this whole thing comes together right now. Cam Reddish has been a pleasant surprise. Today, logging 32 minutes, 26 points, looked really good out there, was probably our best player tonight. Manuel quickly showed a lot off the bench. But at Rose on defense against Gilgeous-Alexander just looked completely outmatched. I don't understand how that is the strategy. And you really feel like this team is missing Mitchell Robinson to a degree that I did not expect them to miss Mitchell Robinson to. I thought this defense was going to be good enough to miss Mitch for 10 games and, not really miss that much of a beat. But it seems like Sims and Hartenstein, despite bringing a lot of other fun elements to the game, just are really not that rim protector that Mitch is. And I don't know if the Knicks defenders are used to having Mitch back there and having that backup, but it seems like they're giving up too much penetration, and that they're trying to keep people out of the lane. They're leaving open the wide open three. They're going to have to make some adjustments and quick. This is a tough road trip coming up for the Knicks with 5 games on the road against tough Western Conference opponents. I'm hopeful that they can find a little something. Sometimes road trips like this help a new young team gel. I'm not giving up by any stretch yet. I see some people out there, on the interwebs calling for Tibbs' head right away, wanting to tank the season. I don't think we're quite there yet, but if they lose 5 games in a row on this road trip and they are looking like they did tonight defensively, we might not see much more of Tom Thibodeau as a Knicks head coach. They might need a fresh face, mix it up with some of this talent. This is our roster. We've locked up Julius. We've locked up RJ. We've locked up Brunson. Like, this is our core. And to keep RJ Barrett on the bench, no matter how poorly he was playing for the whole fourth quarter, feels like a coach that's grasping at straws a little bit, to be honest with you. All right, let's find some positive things from the Knicks, which, again, a little hard to find this week. I've quickly gotten used to Jalen Brunson just automatically going for 20 points and 7 assists per game. I know today he went 17-7, but basically he is a 20-7 machine. And after years of point guard play from Elfrid Payton and Frank Ntilikina, this is and Alec Burks coming in off the bench to play point guard. It is amazing as a Knicks fan to be able to watch Jalen Brunson bring that ball up for 30-plus minutes a game and start to get into a groove with guys like RJ Barrett, Julius, Emmanuel Quickly, and Obi Toppin. I think the Knicks, if their front office did anything right, it is certainly bringing in Brunson. He is that guy, and I think as time goes on, we're only going to see bigger and better things out of him. And Cam Reddish, I mean, last year, Cam Reddish being traded for a first-round pick looked like it was going to be professional malpractice by Leon Rose and the front office. But he is coming out on fire. And if there's anything that we can say that's a positive of Grimes missing time early on this season, it is that we have gotten to see this resurgence of Cam Reddish as a New York Knick. At a minimum, he's playing himself into being a solid rotation player for this team. At worst, and maybe not at worst, maybe it's even better, he's turning himself back into some trade bait going into the trade season as we start getting toward the middle part of this year. One thing that I want to comment on just generally about the Knicks before we move on to the Yankees in the offseason, there are some roster construction issues that we are just not able to get past, that while Thibodeau is not pressing the right buttons so far, just has to be addressed. I know Emmanuel Quickley is a point guard on the books, but I do not feel as comfortable when we are trying to jam in Emmanuel Quickley, Derrick Rose, Jalen Brunson, Evan Fournier, Quentin Grimes into the limited minutes at the guard position, whether they're running the ball or being the off guard. It just doesn't feel enough. And the same goes for Obi Toppin and Julius Randle. Like, we have built a team where too many guys play the same position. Especially going back to the two, with Cam Reddish basically playing shooting guard right now, it makes this roster very challenging to put together, especially once Mitch goes out. And Thibodeau has shown an unwillingness to go with this Obi and Randle lineup that we've liked so much. I know it can be a little bit weak on the defense, but today against the Oklahoma City Thunder felt like the game to go with it. They didn't have any height or rim protectors. It felt like it couldn't have gotten much worse. I would have really liked to have seen a little bit more Obi and Randle on a game like today against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Felt like a game they could have taken advantage of. Again, hearing Thibodeau in that post game talking about getting a spark and not going with the guy that we gave all this money to in RJ Barrett during the offseason, going with Evan Fournier, decisions that just don't make a lot of sense. Tough to explain to a fan base, tough to explain to a front office. Hopefully they get it straightened out soon. All right, let's move on to the New York Yankees. This is our first episode. Obviously, this was a little bit very disappointing end of the season. It was a little tough for me personally to watch the World Series and the Astros and the Phillies down the stretch. But obviously this week, free agency officially started for Major League Baseball, and the Yankees did extend qualifying offers to Aaron Judge and Anthony Rizzo. Obviously, we can expect that Judge is not going to accept that qualifying offer, and the word on the street is Anthony Rizzo is also expected to decline that qualifying offer of about $20 million for 1 year sometime early this week, before the deadline. There are a lot of moves, and we're going to get into those in a few minutes, but one of the pieces of news that I really wanted to talk about was the word on the street around the Aaron Judge contract. Seems like as of right now, all of the speculation about him going off to San Francisco or the Mets or the Boston Red Sox seems to have died down a little bit. And, most of the reports are saying that they think it is likely a reunion with the Yankees is in order. But I know I saw an article out there that said that the expected contract is in the realm of 8 years, $320 million. And my reaction is, that's it? After this whole season of 60 home runs and all the speculation and the inability of the Yankees to get anything done with him, I was expecting, the big pocket San Francisco Giants and Dodgers to push that number a little closer to the $50 million range. I think if you're the Yankees and you can get him for 8 years, $320 million, sign it right now and move on so we can start filling out the rest of the roster. Frankly, it's shocking. The man deserves it. Brian Cashman and Hal Steinbrenner cannot possibly come back to the fan base if he signs for anything around that with any other team. The only way I see Aaron Judge playing in a different uniform is if somebody comes out with an offer that is utterly ridiculous. If the Dodgers or the San Francisco Giants offer him 10 years for $500 million, I mean, it's not my money, but good on you guys, and that might be the way to get him. But I still see Judge re-signing with the Yankees. I'm gonna guess that we end up with him for 8 or 9 years, somewhere between that 320 and I don't know, $350 million. Yankees can't let him go. Just too valuable for the franchise. Other news that was going on in Yankees world was obviously the Cashman Boone press conferences, and just recently the Hal Steinbrenner interview on Yes. I don't really know what to. People are all up in arms talking about the way they talked about the team and, sticking with Josh Donaldson and things like that. Like, I just don't know what you guys are expecting out there. This team is a little bit stubborn. I also don't know what you expect the GM and coach to say at the end of the year. Like, they're going to badmouth guys that are on their team and expected to be on the team next year if they're under contract. Like, they might still be working trades for Josh Donaldson in the background, but you can't come out and say, yes, we're going to move on from Josh Donaldson, or yeah, Josh Donaldson and IKF are disasters and we need to move on. They might be on the team next year, despite the fact that you're ruining their trade value, by talking smack against your own team. So I still think there are moves to be had out there. It's going to be really hard to move the Josh Donaldson contract. I think some team will be interested in IKF, and it felt like Cashman finally acknowledged that we might finally get to see either a Peraza or maybe even a Volpe, pushing IKF and Cabrera for playing time at shortstop this season. That part will kind of play itself out. It's going to be an interesting offseason. We'll continue to check in on that, and obviously any updates we'll go ahead and recap here, because the Yankees have a lot of roster moves. It was very interesting to hear Cashman talk about the need for pitching, which didn't feel like a need for me. If the top of the lineup is the top of the rotation is Cole, Cortez, Sevy, you got to hope Muntas can be a fourth starter on this team. He gave us absolutely nothing yet last year after being traded. I believe a full offseason with the team, working with Matt Blake and the pitching coach staff, that he'll show us a little bit more and at least be a serviceable third or fourth starter next year. And then either we bring back somebody like Jameson Taillon or sign one of the free agents. Seems like the starting pitching I'm not as worried about. I've been a fan over the last few years of the Yankees not spending big dollars on the bullpen. They're finally getting Britton and Chapman off the books, which is going to help them in their attempt to re-sign guys like Judge, Rizzo, and getting a left fielder like Benintendi. So I hope they don't spend big on relievers. I really hope that they can kind of keep that bit in their pants and, focus on the larger needs. We're hearing a lot about, re-signing Benintendi. Maybe. I just don't see it coming. I see us more going. I think Benintendi is going to command a contract that's going to be a little north of what the Yankees are going to want to spend with some of their already existing needs on the team. Not to say it couldn't happen, but he just played at an all-star level. He's still playing at the prime of his career with that Gold Glove, and I just see somebody else offering him a little bit more than the Yankees are willing to right now. And I feel like we should hit on the other hot topic right now, which is Masataka Yoshida, the left fielder from Japan that is gaining a lot of interest this offseason. I just had coming off a great season with the Oryx Buffaloes over there in Japan. Consistently a 300 hitter in Japan. I'm reading not terrific defensive numbers that you're super excited about. And obviously there's a little bit of pop in the bat. Seeing him hit 21 home runs last year, 21 home runs the year before that. He has got some pop. He gets on base. But he is 29 years old right now. So again, not signing him in exactly what you would call the prime of his career. It seems like he'll be commanding at least a 4 to 5 year contract for whichever team in the major leagues ends up signing him. So I'm not super convinced on Yoshida yet. It could be an exciting piece. Andrew Benintendi is 28 years old, coming off a great season. Got a taste with the Yankees, saw what that's all about. You feel much better if you're talking about a similar contract for guys like Yoshida or Benintendi. My vote right now would be Benintendi. This guy knows what it's about. You're not taking the risk on the adjustment coming over from Japan. I think there's some other options out there like Brandon Nimmo. I think the biggest thing with the Yankees is I hope they take this offseason and are a little introspective with their moves. Like I said, I'm not surprised by any of the public comments that have been made by guys like Cashman and Boone so far. But something that stood out to me in the Hal Steinbrenner interview was him complimenting Cashman on his ability to adjust and evolve with the times. And I feel like that is almost a laughable statement to make because Cashman has really not been one to adapt and roll with the times. If anything, he seems like he's been a little hard-headed in sticking with the guys that he thinks are right. don't get me wrong, he has made some great finds. We all laughed at the Clay Holmes deal at the time. That turned out to be brilliant. We were cursing him when he traded Mike Tauchman for Wandy Peralta, and that was a great move. I'm a big Giancarlo Stanton supporter, and I end up thinking that move makes Cashman look brilliant to bring in a guy who has had Stanton's ability, especially in the postseason. But this is a guy who tends to stick with his guns, not reevaluate and see if those are the right decisions. And I really hope just over the last couple seasons, getting bounced in the wild card, coming back and having a very disappointing postseason, getting bounced and getting, bounced in the ALCS the way we did against the Astros, that he can really look inside and make some changes. I hope Hal is right. I hope he is the guy to continue to push us forward. I don't believe the narrative that the Yankees are okay with a great regular season and getting bounced in the ALCS. I don't buy that for 1 second. They are trying to win a championship. They thought they had the team, especially with how well they were playing in the beginning of the year. And, between the injuries and just, that's baseball season. This is going to happen. These teams are going to, the hot team is going to win at the end of the day. We've got some work to do to catch up to teams like the Astros. First things first, let's get Judge signed, and we'll figure out the rest. Well, that's going to do it for the first episode of Talkin' Giants, Knicks and Yanks. If you've listened this far and you can still hear my voice, thank you. If there's anything else you'd like to hear about, any comments on how we can make the show better, please feel free to go ahead and leave us a comment. I really appreciate everybody joining us today. It's really fun to get on here and, share my thoughts on the state of the Giants, Knicks, and Yanks with all of you. We'll be back again next week. Thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, go Giants, Knicks, and Yanks.